Welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we are going to be discussed about the multi-threading concept in Java. Before we asking about the multi-threading, let's discuss the thread. A thread is a lightweight, smallest part of a process that can run concurrently with the other threads of the same process. Threads are independent because they all have the separate path of execution. That's the reason of an exception occur in one thread. It doesn't affect the execution of other threads. All threads of a process share the common memory. The process of executing multiple threads simultaneously is known as multi-threading. Here we have some points to summarize this discussion, which are: the main purpose of multi-threading is to provide the simultaneous execution of two or more parts of a program to maximize utilize the CPU time. A multi-threaded program contains two or more parts that can run concurrently. Each part of a program is called thread. Threads are lightweight subprocesses. They share the common memory spaces in multi-threaded environment. Programs that are benefited from multi-threading utilize the maximum CPU time so that the IDE time can be kept in the minimum. A thread can be in one or the more following states, which are new, runnable, blocked, waiting, time waiting, and terminated. So what is the new here? A new thread that has no yet started in this state. It's called new thread. Runnable thread is a thread that executing in the Java virtual machine in, is in this state. And the block thread is that is blocked waiting for a monitoring log is in this state. The waiting thread is a thread that is waiting identify for another thread to perform a particular action in this state. And the time waiting thread is a thread that is waiting for another thread to perform an action for up to a specified waiting time in this state. And the terminated thread is a thread that has exited in this state. A thread can only one state at the given point in this time. Here we take a look on thread life cycle in Java. The start method creates the system resource necessary to run the thread, schedules the threads to run, and call the threads run method. Here you can see a new, runnable, and then non-runnable, and the block thread, and runnable and the terminated. So a threads become non-runnable when one of these events occur, like if sleep method is invoked, the threads call waiting method, and the thread is blocking in input and output. So a thread dies naturally when the run method is exit. So here you can see a new thread then runnable if the thread becomes non-runnable. So if the reason of that is the thread has a sleeping method, the threads call the waiting method, and this thread is blocking on input and output. So you can see when the sleeping is done, so it's just go to the runnable and then running, and then at the last terminators like run method exists. So if the running is not working here, so it's just go to the sleep block on input and output waiting for the log and suspend the wait, and then it's go in non-relevant condition, and then it is resume, and then its start work here. So now we just see what is thread scheduling. Execution of multiple thread on a single CPU in some order is called scheduling. In the journal, the runnable thread with the highest priority is active running. Java is a priority primitive language. If a high priority thread wakes up and the low priority thread is running, then the high priority thread gets to run immediately, allows on demand processing and efficient use of CPU. Let's suppose these are the six threads here, and the runnable have the high priority than others. So the it will be execute fast instead of these all. So what are the types of scheduling in the threads? First one is the waiting and notifying, then wait, notify all, running and yielding, and then sleeping and wake up. So waiting and notifying. Waiting is a wait and modify. Modifying is a modify and modify all. Provides means of communication between the threads that synchronize on the same object. Wait when wait method is invoked on the object, the thread executing that code is given up its lock on the object immediately and move the thread to the wait state. Notify means this wake up threads that call wait on the same object and move the threads to its ready state. Now notify all is this wake up all the threads that call wait on the same object. And the running and yielding is yield is used to give the other threads of the same priority a chance to execute. For example, the causes current running threads to move to running state. And now we just see sleeping and waking up scheduling of the thread. So n sleeping is used to pause a thread for a specified priority of the time. Move the current running thread to sleep state for a specified moment of a time. Before moving it to runnable state, thread.sleep means no of millisecond. So threads always work on the priority base. Now we just see the what is multitasking versus multi-threading and multiprocessing versus parallel processing. So if you are new to the Java, you may get confused amongst these terms and they are used quite frequently when we discuss multi-threading. So let's talk about multitasking. So what is multitasking? So ability to execute more than one task at the same time is known as multitasking. And the multi-threading is we already discussed about it. It is the process of executing multiple threads simultaneously. Multi-threading is also known as multi-based tasking. Multiprocessing, it is same as multitasking. However, in multiprocessing, more than one CPU are involved. On the other hand, one CPU is involved in multitasking. Now we just see the parallel processing. It's referred to utilization of multiple CPU in single computer time. How to create the thread in Java. The two ways to create the thread in Java. One is extending thread class and another one is by implementing runnable interface. Before we begin with the program's code of creating the thread. Let's take a look on these methods of the thread classes. We have used few of these methods in our Java, like getName, purity. Get purity is alive, join, run, sleep, and start. So getName is used for obtaining the thread name. Get purity is used for obtain a thread purity, and is alive is determined if a thread is still running. Join is for waiting for a thread to terminate. Run is the entry point of the thread, and the sleep is suspend a thread for a period of the time, and the start is a thread by calling its running method. Now we just see the example of the thread creation by extending the thread class. So I just create a class with the name of multi-threading. So and here I just extend the class which is thread. Now here I just write public void and the run method, and then system dot out dot print line, and the print line here is my thread is running state. So I just define a method which is run, and then the print line which is my thread is in running state. Then here I just write the main method public static void and main and strings and the arguments. Now I just copy this class name and create the object to it, which is equal to obj and new multi-threading. And here when I just create an object, so I just use this start. So you can see start void is thread. So I just save this code and then I just execute. So my thread is in running state. Now we just go to the another example of the thread, and here I just create a class which is the name of count, and it's count here. Now I just extend this class with thread, and here I just use count as a method and then use super keyword, and here I just write my extending thread, and then system dot out dot print line, and then print line is my thread created, and then just concatenate this keyword, and then start. So this is a super keyword, so start with small s and start our thread here. Now I just create a method which is for run, and then use for statement and for integer which is I is equal to 0, I is less than 10, and I plus plus. So this is a for loop here, and then I just write system dot out dot print line, and the print line here is printing the count and plus I. Now here I just use thread dot sleep and thread dot sleep. So our thread is sleep here, means it will off for a 1 second. So I just write 1000 for my this thread, and this is a column here, and not a column, and I is less than. Okay, and the thread is sleep for 1 second. Now, so I just write thread dot sleep for 1000. Okay, now here I just define the catch exception, and then interpreter, and interrupted thread is interrupted for exception E. So here I just write the class which is interrupted exception E. So this exception is thrown when a thread is writing, sleeping, or otherwise it's occupied and the thread is interrupted either before or during the activity. So a method may wish to test whatever the current thread has been interrupted, and if so, to immediately throw in this exception. So you can write this code like interrupted exception. Okay, so I just define an exception which is interrupted, and the interrupted here is exception E. Now system dot out dot println, and the println here is my thread, and thread is interrupted. Okay, and then I just go to the another line of code, and which is system dot out dot print line, and the print line here is my thread run is over here. So I just go to the another class now, and before we just go to the another statement, so I just define one try statement here. So try and the catch, and now I just go to the another class which is extending example, and here I write the main method. So public is static void main, and then here I just write a string and the arguments. Now here count and object which is equal to count new count, and then try statement exception. So while cnt dot is alive. So is alive is java.lang thread is alive method test. If this thread is alive, a thread is alive if has starting and has no yet died. So this method is used for a thread is alive if it has been started and has not yet died. And then I just start system.out.println, and the print line here is main thread will be alive till the child thread is live. Okay, and now here I just write the code, which is thread dot sleep and sleep for 1.5 second, so it's 1500. And then I just use catch, and catch is interrupted exception, which is E, and system dot out dot print line, and the print line here is main thread interrupted. And after that I just write system dot out dot print line, and the print line here is main thread is run over. Okay, now we just check the output, and now you can see here my thread is created, and then my exception thread is 5 main, and the main thread will be alive, and it's and the child thread is live. So it will print after one, you can see here 1 second, 2, 3, and then 1.5 second, you can see here. So its thread is executing after 1.5 second. So this is example, or this is also example of thread creation by extending thread class. Now we just see the second method to create by implementing the runnable interface of the thread. So here I just write source package thread and create the class, which is multi threading, and here I just implement, because I am just using thread with the interface, so I just use implements here and runnable. So now I just write public void and run, and then system dot out dot println, and the print line here is my thread is in running state. Now main method, main public static void main, and then string and the arguments here. Now this class name, because I am making the object here, so multi-threading obj, which is equal to new and multi-threading. So I just call the thread here, which is obj thread obj, which is equal to new thread. So I just make the object to the thread here, and I just change the name of this object, which is object number 1, and I just call my this object here in the thread. So object one dot start here. So now I just run this code, and here you can see my thread is in running state because I just create an object to my multi-threading class here, and then I just call this object in my thread, and the answer of this is my thread is in running state. So we see in this lecture we made thread by creating the thread class, and we just made a thread with implements like the interface. But what are the advantages of multi-threading in Java? So it does not block the user because threads are independent and you can perform multiple operations at same time. You can perform many operations together, so it saves our time. And then threads are independent, so it does not affect other threads. If exceptions occur in a single thread, so it will handle it. So this is the multi-threading concept in Java. Thanks for watching this lecture.